In the quiet dawn of existence, when the world was new and breathed with pristine life, there was a place of unparalleled perfection, a sanctuary crafted by the hand of God. It was called the Garden of Eden. Picture this, a paradise where every tree was laden with vibrant, delicious fruit, where crystal-clear rivers meandered through lush landscapes, and where all creatures, great and small, lived in perfect harmony. There was no fear, no sorrow, no end of days. This flawless world was the home God designed for the very first man and woman, Adam and Eve. They walked in this paradise, surrounded by an abundance of everything good. They had nourishing food at their fingertips, breathtaking beauty for their eyes, and the unique gift of walking and talking directly with their Creator. Their lives were simple, filled with peace and purpose. Amidst this boundless freedom, God gave them just one boundary, one simple instruction. He said, "You may eat freely from every tree in the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die." This wasn't a test of hunger. It was a test of heart. It was a question of trust. Would they rely on God's infinite wisdom? Or would they reach for a power they weren't meant to hold? Would they be content in their relationship with Him? Or would they desire to become gods themselves? But into this perfect harmony, a dissonant voice slithered. A serpent, described as more crafty than any other beast, approached Eve with a question designed to plant a seed of doubt. Did God really say, he hissed, "You must not eat from any tree in the garden"? His words twisted God's generous provision into a harsh restriction. Eve, innocent and honest, corrected him, explaining the single rule they had been given, but the serpent was ready with his lie. "You will not surely die," he countered. "For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." The temptation was powerful. The promise of forbidden knowledge, of divine status, of ultimate control, it was a law too strong to ignore. Eve looked at the tree. The fruit was indeed a delight to the eyes, and it appeared good for food. But more than that, it was desirable for making one wise. The serpent's words echoed in her mind. The desire to be more, to know more, to control her own destiny, overwhelmed her trust in God. In a single, fateful act, she reached out, took the fruit, and ate. The line had been crossed. She then turned to her husband, Adam, who was with her, and gave him some of the fruit. And he, too, ate. In that moment of shared disobedience, the perfect world they knew shattered. Instantly, their innocence vanished. They looked at each other, and for the very first time, they felt shame. They saw their own vulnerability, their nakedness, and scrambled to cover themselves with fig leaves. The open, easy fellowship they had with God was broken. When they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, their first instinct was no longer joy, but fear. They hid themselves among the trees. God's call echoed through the garden. "Where are you?" It wasn't a question of location. God, of course, knew where they were. It was a question of relationship, a heartbroken father asking his children how they had gotten so lost. When God confronted them, the blame game began. Adam, shirking responsibility, pointed to Eve. "The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it." Then Eve, in turn, pointed to the serpent. "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." But passing the blame couldn't erase the choice they had made. They had listened to the voice of doubt instead of the voice of their Creator. The consequences were immediate and profound. The serpent was cursed to crawl on its belly forever. Eve was told she would experience great pain in childbirth, and her relationship with her husband would be fraught with conflict. Adam was told the ground itself would be cursed because of him. He would have to toil and sweat for every morsel of food, and his life would end by returning to the dust from which he came. And the most devastating consequence of all, they were banished from the garden. Paradise was lost. No longer could they live in the immediate presence of God. To ensure they could never return and eat from the tree of life, thus living forever in their fallen state. God placed a mighty angel with a flaming sword to guard the way. Humanity's perfect beginning had come to a tragic end. The world was now fractured by sin, and death had entered the story. Yet, even in this moment of judgment, a sliver of light pierced the darkness. God made a promise. He told the serpent that a descendant of Eve, one of her offspring, would one day come and crush its head. This was the first glimmer of the gospel, a divine hint that evil and death would not have the final say. A plan for redemption was already being set in motion. The story of the Garden of Eden is far more than an ancient tale about a man, a woman, and a piece of fruit. It's our story. It is a foundational narrative that explains the world as we know it, a world filled with breathtaking beauty and profound brokenness. It speaks to the core of the human condition, the constant tension between trusting in a higher power and the desire for self-determination. We see this drama play out every day, in our own lives and in the world around us. We all face temptations that promise wisdom, power, or pleasure, asking us to compromise what we know is right. We all know the feeling of shame and the instinct to hide when we've made a wrong choice. This story teaches us that our choices have consequences, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come. The fall wasn't just a personal failure. It was a cosmic event that introduced struggle, pain, and separation into the human experience. But it's also a story of incredible hope. It sets the stage for the rest of the biblical narrative, which is the unfolding story of God's relentless pursuit of humanity. It tells us that even when we fall, even when we fail spectacularly, we are not abandoned. The promise to crush the serpent's head points forward, through thousands of years of history, to a future rescuer. It reminds us that God's plan was never to leave us in our brokenness. So, the Garden of Eden is not just a lost paradise we mourn. It is the starting point of a grand, sweeping journey. A journey that moves from brokenness toward healing, from separation toward reconciliation, and from a garden lost to a heavenly city promised. It is the beginning of a story that finds its ultimate fulfillment in a hope that is greater than any failure. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back to the beginning. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a like and consider subscribing for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world. We'd love to have you in our community. Until next time, take care.